other baseball subjects while we have a little extra time in our hand. And I often think about how many great players were on that '94 Montreal team. I think Pedro Martinez, John Wetland were on that team. The observations, Ron Swoboda summed it up best. And, 7 games, all won by the road team. That's just, you want to talk about records or things that'll never happen again. That may be one of those never.
Yeah, and it was the first time that happened too. The graphic on Fox last night, and all 3 major American sports that play 7 games, even though you can, the Canadians can have hockey for what it's worth.
You better learn it, otherwise.
I'm not disputing the relevant.
I'm going to make you eat your words on it. Canadians better have hockey for its worth.
Get me a Gretzky LA Kings jersey and we'll be good. But anyway, in all 3 major American sports that have gone to best of 7 series, that has never happened until last night. You can go back through the Elias Sports Bureau, every sports index for those respective sports, and you can never find that because it just hasn't happened. And the fact that it did happen, but then again, you know what I think that gets to? The narrative that has persisted around baseball since its first inception with the 1869 Reds that went 65-0, and they had Harry and George Wright on that team and Albert Spalding. They said this: baseball is the most unpredictable game there ever is. The fact that Howie Kendrick, of all people, can be a hero in a postseason game, the fact that Bill Mazeroski can hit a walk-off home run off of Ralph Terry with Yogi Berra playing left field of all positions in the 1960 World Series, or Joe Carter can hit a home run to win a World Series in '93. It's, a myriad of other odd occurrences. The fact that Tom Seaver, I believe, once won 3 games in one day. You can look that up.
Well, we can get into that. We can get into a lot of those numbers.
What I'm getting to is the fact that you're going to see things in baseball that you're normally not going to see in other sports that are outside of its realm. The first time I saw a tie in the NFL, I didn't understand it because I always thought you played in overtime until somebody either scored a field goal and then you scored a touchdown or whatever. But the fact that, baseball just provides us those things that we don't normally see. I would argue that other sports are a lot more predictable, but baseball is just the most unpredictable of them all. It's a crapshoot every time you go out there.
Plus, you got to remember, it's the only game out there that's not outside of tennis. There's no time clock to it either.
And that is the beauty of it. And some people would argue that it's to its detriment. And you know what? The 4-hour World Series games, I can't stand. But there's an intrinsic beauty in the slowness and the pace of a baseball game that you do not get with other sports.
Oh, I agree. We both agree on that one for sure. That to me, baseball is what it is. You can sit here and alter certain things. Like you can alter visits to the mound. Who cares? How many people are paying attention to it? I personally don't care. I'm glad we brought this up with Ron Swoboda. That, to me, the 3 batter minimum really doesn't bother me as much as it probably would. Because once upon a time, pitchers used to pitch 2 or 3 innings to get to save. So just think that might be something that you're actually bringing back beforehand.
And to that, because I agree with you, an example of 2 pitchers that I think of, lefty specialists, Jerry Blevins, who last I believe pitched with the New York Mets, and I believe was with the Oakland A's and the Nationals as well, and Oliver Perez, who's had a very long, very well-traveled career, obviously with the Pirates, the Padres, the Mets, the Indians, Astros, a myriad of other teams, Nationals as well. Those guys grew up getting lefties and righties out. Both of those guys were starting pitchers in the minor leagues. You mean to tell me that if you put a ball in their hands, and I don't know if both of them are going to play next year, given their advanced ages, they're in their mid to late 30s, that they can't get a righty out? Right. I think that's ridiculous because obviously, the analytics may say otherwise, but at the same time, they don't really have enough data in recent years to really see them against right-handed, hitters, the fact that they're lefty specialists. But the 3 batter minimum would increase pace of play, and that's really the biggest thing we're trying to do because we live in such an ADD consumer-driven culture that everybody just gets so tired right away. And even me, I love baseball, but I'm not attuned to muting or maybe even changing the channel if a game is taking too long. At the same time, I wouldn't want to change something about a game that's been played the same way since 1969 because Bob Gibson was so good in '68 with the 1.12 ERA. He had to lower the mound. But no, look, the game is trying to move in directions that will appeal to younger viewers, and I understand that. And you know what, robot umps, if this postseason has showed us anything, especially in the World Series, it's that they may need to become a thing. But at the same time, you're going to take a lot of the human element out of it, which is fine. It's trial and error. But I think with the advent of these new technologies and just these new rules that we're implementing to some degree, and not everything that we're going to implement is going to be good, I think, we're going to be able to make changes that will, we're not going to see as many manager arguments. When is a manager going to argue with a computer? I mean, computers are better than all of us, but they're programmed by humans, so they're worthy of they're capable of being beaten or dethroned or, whatever adjective you want to, or verb you want to use to describe them. So, yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. There's nothing you can really do about it. It doesn't stop the fact that the Nationals are World Series champions, and you can't take that away from them. This isn't 1919 where the Reds won it because the White Sox threw it, and Eddie Seacott was hitting the first batter of the game, and Shoeless Joe Jackson supposedly took money even though he hit 375 and hit the only home run in that series. But you know what? Like, baseball's history, unlike any other sport, is so storied, and it's like the fact that it's so long, it's sprawling, and it's gone in a myriad of different directions that we can sit and talk about maybe for days, and I'd probably write a book on it, but what am I building? I
don't know, I can see a book or two inside of you.
Yeah.
I probably could, although I'll wait to see how your editorial progresses here, but although it is very nicely, so we'll see if you write on the Mets fantasy camp later on in January.
Man, get a picture with Ron Swoboda. I mean, we'll get to see everyone out there. Maybe I'll get to touch Noah Syndergaard's hair. I'm just kidding on that one. I'm kidding. But,
Well, yeah, but you know what, though? They're good people. The Mets, I've had a good working relationship with them throughout the years for sure. And, it's one of those kind of things where I will look forward to seeing Ron for sure. And I like to meet a lot of the majority of the guests that we get at times when I'm in the area, or if they come down here. And Florida's such a transient state, and the fact that the Mets do have ties to Southern Florida. So, it's very doable. It's
a very nice stadium, too. I have been down there. But Ron did raise a good point, and he was 100% right on this. The back end of their bullpen really didn't get it done this year. Right. When they acquired Edwin Diaz in the Robinson Cano trade, which I wasn't a big fan of because they gave up their top power-hitting outfield prospect, Jared Kelenic, who looks to be a very big star, and a centerpiece of that Mariners rebuild that they have going on there. Edwin Diaz had one of the worst seasons of all time for a reliever. I believe the fact his 18 home runs were second most allowed ever by a relief pitcher in baseball history. For a guy who was 2 pitches, but it was a 100-mile-an-hour fastball with one of the nastiest sliders you've seen this side of the Milky Way galaxy, it's kind of unfortunate. And then Justin Wilson, a trusted veteran who had done it for the Cubs, for the Yankees, for the Tigers, your Detroit Tigers, a very big asset to that team for some years. I did it with the Pittsburgh Pirates as well. To see him struggle the way he did, to be without, Jed Lowry for most of that season, the idea that you'd hire Brody Van Wagenen, Jacob deGrom's agent, to be your general manager. Right. And you know what? It does not shock me. And I don't know how you feel, but it does not shock me that they still don't have a manager.
Well, I mean, that's for another day. Okay. I don't know what they're waiting for. A bunch of great candidates got away from them, but I'll be curious to see how that thing plays out.
And the fact that they're even – look, you respect Carlos Beltran because of what he's meant to this game. Very good player, a possible future Hall of Famer. But Carlos Beltran, given his relationship with the Mets, he will not. I don't think that relationship will end well. I think it'll go down in flames the same way it did with Callaway. You want to get somebody like Eduardo Perez in there, and you guys were, I believe, you were talking with somebody earlier about this, and you said he hadn't heard from him, about Perez in those managerial meetings of late. But I think Perez, and look, you can say, it's a little bit of nepotism. His dad is a Hall of Fame first baseman. That's beyond the point. I mean, given the fact that his dad did play and he was around baseball for so long, and I'm not going to take that away from Beltran. Beltran is, 3 times the player that Perez was. But Perez, when you're not the star player, I think you see baseball from a very different lens. And I hope you would agree with me on that, because it's like when you hire a catcher, catchers make the best managers, except Mike Matheny, but we'll talk about that another day.
Right.
But I think Perez has the personality, because he is so even-keeled, though he can get fiery. I think it's the personality that's perfect for that city. Right. Callaway was very hostile at times. I mean, if you want to talk NFL, Baker Mayfield, in his interview yesterday, was very hostile with reporters. That's not going to work.
Right.
That if you want to maintain a sense of longevity and build that tenure up, you're going to have to be able to learn to deal with the media. And Perez is probably going to be someone who's prone to snap once in a while, but at the same time, I would rather have a personality like that than Beltran, who I'm not going to call him a prima donna, but given the fact that he made over $200 million in his career, he he can't relate to the 25th man on the roster. Eduardo Perez can, because he at many points in his career when he was with the Reds and other teams that he played for, he was that player. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you can preach something that hits your ace starting pitcher on your team. If you can, Jacob deGrom will probably take a liking to him regardless. If you can preach something that gets to deGrom and can wake something up under Syndergaard, and you can get to a guy on the roster, maybe like a Kevin Plawecki, or who's not there anymore. I'm sorry, Thomas Nido, their backup catcher. It's gonna pay dividends for you, and you'd be foolish not to give somebody like that the opportunity. And I think if Brody wants to at least do something of note, hire him, please. And that's all I have to say.
Well, here on the Sports Exchange South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network is Mel Farr. Mel, welcome to the show.
How you guys doing?
All right, how are you doing? What are your thoughts about the World Series? Just ended, but, unfortunately the Braves didn't get there, but the Washington Nationals did.
Yeah, it was exciting. I mean, they took a long way to get there, being the wild card team. But, yeah, I thought it was an exciting series.
Right.
And yesterday was, it was a nail-biter.
No, Mel, this is Lewis here. I agree with you. I mean, a couple of very interesting storylines that developed out of that game. But, I mean, a question I wanted to ask you real quick. I mean, I'm sure you saw the final out when Daniel Hudson, who, released at the end of spring training by the Angels, winds up going with the Blue Jays, traded to the Nationals midseason, really helps revamp that bullpen and becomes a force for them in those late innings with Doolittle. What do you if there was one player on that team you were most proud of, who do you think it would be?
The young fellow Soto,
mm-hmm.
and I like both of those guys, man. Rendon was key. That home run that he had, I think, yesterday,
mm-hmm.
that changed the tide of the game. That made AJ go to the bullpen. I really think Greinke was pitching an outstanding game. He threw a bad pitch, and once they took him out and brought in who was it, Harris?
Yeah, Will Harris. Yeah, I think
he throws more straighter pitches. Greinke was throwing those pitches that they had a lot of bend to him. He either had some bend or speed. They couldn't catch up to him. He was throwing a hell of a game.
Yeah, and look, we can say I've said before about Dave Roberts' managerial oomphs as a Dodgers manager, and it's 3 years in a row now that this narrative has really manifested. But A.J. Hinch is one of the two best, if not he's the best manager in baseball, in my opinion. I think last night we saw a human side from him where he genuinely just made mistakes that didn't work out. Greinke shouldn't have been taken out of that game. I believe he had thrown like 75 pitches at that time, and he got screwed on a 2-1 pitch, a beautiful changeup where if you looked at the K zone on TV, it should have been a strike, but Soto ends up walking because he calls it a ball, and then he throws a pitch away.
Right.
And then obviously he gets taken out. Harris, who hangs a cutter to Kendrick for a 2-run homer that gives him the lead, and then not pitching Garrett Cole. I mean, me, and Scott would agree that Garrett Cole had to pitch in that game last night.
Well, he had to,
but
he
I think
did.
the right situation.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I understand Cole's been a starter the entirety of his career, and he hasn't relieved actually since he was a freshman at UCLA. But at the same time, I would rather trust Garrett Cole, who's been your ace all year. You want to end it the same way that they did with Chris Sale in 2018 when the Red Sox won, or when Bumgarner did it in 2014. Although that may never be reached again. But the Nationals did it with Corbin for 3 innings, and then they had Hudson, a former starter, close it out too. So, I mean, yeah, Hinch made some mistakes, man, but I really think, I think all three of us could agree, even given the fact that you live in Georgia and probably are a big Atlanta Braves fan, that the Nationals were just this team of destiny that were, this year it just kind of fell in their lap in the postseason, and they were the team that we've all thought, and at some of us were surprised and some weren't, but the fact that they are standing on top of the mountain just doesn't shock me.
Well, when you think of the fact that they had 5 elimination games, I hate to think that the Milwaukee game was an elimination game, but it was a playing game, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And then they had the situation where you're dealing with this incredible series. What can I say? They're definitely a team of destiny. And so, Mel, when you talk about things going full circle here, that in 1994 the Montreal Expos probably – well, they had the best record in baseball before the strike. And we were on a collision course to see the Yankees / Expos at the time appeared to be the two teams that would have played in the World Series. and yet for it to turn out the way it did, it's just remarkable how certain scenarios play out, isn't it?
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, so, but, you know,